Hey, my name is Chad with CWP Woodworks. This is my first video, so bear with me as I try to tune this JX8 joiner from Laguna. I decided to make this video because I couldn't find any other reviews or anything on this joiner. Maybe one didn't really explain much, how to set it up or how to tune it, adjust the beds, anything like that. So I actually had to reach out to Laguna and ask them for their procedures because unlike most other joiners I've seen, the adjustments aren't very obvious. They're covered by plates, so yeah. So to start, you have to take off these two front plates. They're just covers, and then there's also two on the back. I've already removed those. They're just two 6mm bolts with a 5mm Allen. This cover, just loosen the bolts, it lifts off. It doesn't actually have holes in it. And the other one, you have to take the knob off of the height adjustment lock. Take that knob off, and then you actually have to take both these bolts out because you can't lift it off because of that knob there. And then after you get those off, that'll reveal your four front adjustment cams. So you got a cam here, a cam underneath where your blade guard would go, and then another one on the opposite side, and the last one. And it's mirrored on the back side. There's another four adjustment cams, and they're all locked with a 2.5mm Allen set screw. You have to loosen that set screw and then move this 24mm cam nut, and that's how you get your beds to adjust, to move up and down. There's actually an indent on the nut, and that signifies where the cam is in its arc. So low, if you're pointing downward, that's going to be as high as you can get it, and then whenever it's pointing upwards, that's going to be as low as the bed will go. And here's the other cams that I talked about. And then you come around to the back. This is going to be your other four on the back side, and one is a little bit harder to get to because it's underneath like the fence carriage assembly, and then the rest of them are pretty easy to get to with either an open end wrench or a socket. I ended up using both on mine. Now setting this joiner up like this, if it's not perfect when you get it, which mine wasn't, it actually had a little bit of shipping damage, and yeah, nothing was parallel, straight, or anything. I mean, I had to adjust just about everything, but so you can see, find your little, they call it a grub screw right here. You can loosen this. This is your set screw that holds your cam in place, and you want to be careful when you loosen these. These cams can actually come off of the shaft that holds this bed to the joiner. I found when I first started to adjust it that my beds ended up like way out of alignment with each other. They were, and some of these nuts were like almost off the shafts, and I didn't really notice it until I went to adjust the fence, and the fence wasn't straight with the beds, and that was the problem, is because I didn't pay attention to how these shafts are moving in and out. You got to make sure that they stay flush with the ends of the nuts, and make sure that the beds, stay within the same plane, like parallel to each other. Which I just set a straight edge up along this outside edge, and made sure that the tables were as straight as I could get them. So you just got to be aware of that when you loosen these nuts. Press that cam back into it on the shaft. But you'll see as I move this, I'm going down. As that gets lower towards the bottom, and the bed's going up. So right there, I'm as far up as it's probably going to be. When it hits that arc, it's going to start dropping. And so now I know that there's going to be some adjusting to do on this, because I can't really get it to 0. So I'm at my highest point right there. Now I know that the back is going to be low here, because I'm almost to the lowest part of the adjustment. In the front, I need to actually take it up more, and I can't do that. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to adjust the bed all the way to the bottom of its arc and kind of just start there. And I'll go around and I'll do that to each one of them and just get them all at their lowest point and start there. That way I can raise them as I need to. And I would actually recommend tightening these back up after each. Well, actually, I can show you kind of what happened here. This happens every time. And you can see how this nut is actually backed off of this shaft. And now I just tightened it. So I keep that loose, and then you'll see that you can push this nut back onto that shaft. And see, now it's flush. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to do than others, but that's what you want to be aware of. You don't want to let those nuts keep walking on every corner and then the whole thing goes out of whack. Here I'm just trying to get the lip of the in-feed table parallel to the out-feed table before I start working on the rear of the table. Alright, so I've got it as close as I'm going to get it in the front, within a half thou or so. So now I need to work on the back side of the table. And what I'm wanting to do here is try to mirror the front side with the back side. So as I bring this back side up, it's going to lower the front and it's going to throw the front out. But what I want to do is I just want to have this table out the same on like the 4 corners basically. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 corners where your cams are. If you can get those on the same plane, if they're like all out like 15 thou, that just means that they're parallel. I just got to raise the bed up to, or like put the bed wherever I want it. But so I'm not looking for 0 here. I'm just looking to get it as close as I can. I'll loosen one of these back ones, and just so you can see how it changes. Every little change you make on here, I mean, it makes a difference on the opposite corner. So as I move this one, you know, it moves that dial significantly, almost as much as if you move the one near it. So what I'll probably do is I'll take my straight edge and I'll try to bring the back up, keep the dial on the front here. Keep the dial on the front and just let it tell me how far off it is. Basically, I'm going to get my feeler gauges out. I'll get the feeler gauges out and I'll and when I get the straight edge on there, I'll measure out and back, and I'll try to mirror with my feeler gauges. Whatever I'm out here, I'll mirror back there. And that's the only way I can see to do it at the moment. So here I got out the straight edge and broke out my feeler gauges to try and attempt to measure the gap between the straight edge and the table and just adjust so that on all 4 corners the gap is as close as I can get it. it kind of worked okay, but after squaring up the fence to the table, I noticed that I could not get the fence square on both tables because something was out of whack on the tables. So I had to come up with a new way of getting these tables parallel to each other. So I ended up squaring the fence to the outfeed table and then working on the infeed table. So I ended up getting pretty frustrated with it, and I kind of gave up on it for a little while. I came back to it after watching a video by Garage Woodworks. He had made a similar jig to what I'm showing here. It's basically my version of it with two mag switch 150s and a dial indicator, just screwed to some scrap wood in an attempt to try to see if I can get the beds coplanar again. And the audio wasn't very good right here, so all I'm explaining is that I drilled the two 40mm holes for the two mag switch 150s, and then attached a dial indicator to the end of this in the same fashion that Garage Woodworks did. And I did not drill the 40mm holes through the plywood. I stopped like a 1/16 short, and you can see, turn the magnets on and it'll lock it down to the table. There's some play in the end if you push on it, but it will stay where it's set if you don't have any downward force on it. So what I did here is I had another dial indicator set up where I got the outfeed leveled. The outfeed's leveled with the cutter head. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to zero this out and then just make sure that this side is the same or within like a thou or so, pretty close anyway. And I've got it about as close as I'm going to get it. And then after you have your outfeed set to your cutter head, and also square to the fence, a big problem I was having was after I aligned the beds like I thought, I couldn't get the fence square. And Laguna actually sent me a new fence to try to remedy the problem. I don't think that was the problem. With the eccentric cams that you adjust, this table you can adjust it kind of all directions. So what I did is I squared the bed to the fence as best I could, with also having the cutter head aligned with the table so that the table is like parallel to the cutter head. So then from there I'm gonna leave the outfeed table. I'm not gonna mess with that anymore, and I'm strictly working on the infeed table now. So what I'll do is I've got the magnets turned on, so this little contraption that I made, I'm going to set that to 0. And just kind of tapping it to check, make sure that it goes back to 0. This thing does have some play in it. It's not perfect. It was just a rough jig that I threw together after seeing another one a guy used on YouTube. I can't remember his name right now. But then from there, I just went and tried to push the jig. I didn't try to actually like hold on it, because if you go to like hold on it and like actually move it, you can kind of mess up the reading. But if you just push it back and forth, it won't mess it up. But also I didn't drill all the way through on these mag switches, so there's like probably a 32nd to 1/16 of wood in between the table and the mag switches, so I can still slide it. And right there is actually, I mean, that's as good as it's going to get. I went from the back to the front and at 0. And like, I'll put a link to the guy's video, but basically he said along 3 planes, you've got this plane here, so you can make sure that that's adjusted. And then you want to make sure that the back of the bed is adjusted, which works good for dovetailed ways joiners, but not for parallelogram joiners. So I had to do this one a little bit differently. But this was my end goal. But then also, you can set this joiner to 0, or set the dial indicator to 0 here, and then move this back and forth along the bed to see like how far out, see if that bed is off like off square, I guess. But then you can slide this thing back, slide it back to underneath the back adjustment cams, and then do the same thing. Set it to 0, go back, go forward, and I'm off a little bit there. It's not much, like a thou and a half. It's pretty close. So basically that's what I did, is I kept adjusting it, trying to get this within spec. And then I would check the outfeed table. I'd check the infeed table compared to the outfeed table again and see how much further it was off. I would adjust those cams and basically just work back and forth and keep coming back here, setting it to 0, and then moving it out, and then seeing where I was at. And I had to do a lot of adjustments, but once you get to where you're actually checking these sides, all 4 of these cams can mess with that number. Like if I was to move one back here, it would mess that up. So it was really just trial and error. I just kept adjusting, tried to get it as best I could, and I think it's as good as it's going to get right now. It's within a couple thou, like 1 to 2 thousandths. I'm good with that. And then hopefully the fence is going to be square to the rest of it. We'll kind of see. So I've still got an issue where I can get the fence square here, and out here it's all square to the outfeed table. And when I come to the infeed table, it's square here, but then it's slightly out back there. And that might be due to the table adjustment. I could fix it by probably lowering, like moving that cam just a little bit, but when I move that cam, it's going to move the rest of the table, and I don't think I want to take that chance. I'm just going to try to run it the way it is and hope that because these are square, I'll have enough reference surface that is square. I mean, it's close. It's probably like a thousandth out. Like it's really close. So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully this will work, because I'm getting pretty frustrated with this thing. Alright, so I thought I was recording, but I wasn't. I just ran this through face down first, and then against the square edge, like you would join a normal board. And then just checking it for flatness. I lay it against the table and just try to make sure that it doesn't rock in any directions, which still kind of seems to have a little bit of sway. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. And then taking a square to it, you can see it's about as square as I'm gonna get it. It looks a lot better than it did before, and I'm pretty happy with that. I was kind of losing hope with it. I didn't think we were ever going to get a good piece off of it, but I'll run it through one more time, see if I can get that slide twist out of there. And I don't see any snipe on that end either, so maybe I just need to run it through another time. I had already ran this board. This was my test piece before. So yeah, now it doesn't rock at all. It's a lot better than what it was. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now I spent a lot of time with this straight edge and feeler gauges trying to get these beds go planer. Not really sure what I was doing wrong, but it just wasn't working out for me. I couldn't get the fence square to the beds until I started adjusting the beds to get them square to the fence. Like holding the square up against the fence and then adjusting the beds until it was square. And after I was able to do that, I figured it had to be something I was doing wrong. Um, so then I found that video from Garage Woodworks and decided to try to make that jig and just see what I could come up with. And it seems to have worked for me. So hopefully you learned something from this video. I'm no professional, but uh, figured it might help somebody out there. Thanks for watching, and feel free to ask anything in the comments.